29. Came up with an old Dodge car, two horses, one he bought at Flemington and one which he used to use as his builder's horse in Concord. He bought the spring cart that he used as his builder's car in Concord. That came with them. Took him 2 days to get 2.5 days to get the horse and cart up, and I don't know how long to get the Dodge up. The house itself wasn't very much, nothing like what it is now. I think it was about 2 rooms and a veranda, I think.
3 main rooms. If you go in, everyone's welcome to go in. If you go in through this dining room area, there's 3 rooms in a row. Those 3 rooms, and the front door was actually the fireplace. Yeah, that was the original then, had a veranda. Yeah. That was it.
So which was the kitchen of those 3 rooms? Which was the
veranda.
It was on the veranda outside.
It was on the veranda. It wasn't really a kitchen.
And do they know when that was first built?
I don't know when it was first built. In on the table there's a few things of mine, and one of them there is a bound loose cover book, a small brownish cover thing, which I did up as a story of my grandparents, called Garthown. And in there, if you want to trace the family, the history of the house, you can see it there. It sort of tells you the different dates when things were added on from Grandmother's diary. I've added to that. It's interesting things that come up. One stage it says, Frank added more to the chimney. If you look at the chimney out there, she's pretty tall. Yeah, it's a long time to get it to actually draw properly. And when I moved to Bathurst myself, I met up with an old bricklayer and they said, "Oh, Fragar, I remember the old bloke out at Garthown. He said he had a chimney out there, he couldn't get it to cope. He kept adding to it to make it work." You know? Marvellous when things come back. But it's probably my grandparents moving out here that meant that I grew up out in the west of the state, and a lot of you other people grew up over in the Penrith area and that sort of stuff, and so we never mixed very much. And I've missed that, to be honest. But this place here is really very special to me because ever since I was born, it's been like a second home. Dad and Mum would come down here regularly, we'd work down here regularly. Shearing time, as soon as I could do it, I would come and help them shearing until I was, left home myself. So it was a very, very special place. You'd come over the top of the hill there in the truck and Grandma's head would stick out the door, and she was a unique woman. Even anyone who knew her would know she was just, you won't find nicer. I'm biased, I know, but you won't find better. She would just stick her head out and she said, "I knew you were coming on Monday." And look, I honestly believe it was true. And when I read through her diaries, and I read how many people would come to Garthown to visit Grandma. Mainly Auntie Hilda and Uncle Frank, but it was always Auntie Hilda first. And she was so open, so hospitable, and people just loved them. And this became, I hadn't realised until the last few years how much this became a second home for a lot of people. During the war and things like that, Grandma's family would come up here and stay here while there's danger in Sydney and things like that. And I'm finding these things out from old records and that. It was just amazing how many people loved Garthown. And I sort of thought when Max said we're going to Garthown for the reunion, I thought, why Garthown? And I started to think about the number of people that did have a contact with Garthown, more than I ever realised. And then I started to realise it's the longest still family farm that is staying in the family still at the moment. And so that's probably a good reason to have it at Garthown. Anyway, they moved up here in 1929 with nothing but a big debt. If you look through some of the Garthown records there, you'll see how much it cost him to buy horseshoes and hay and all the stuff that was established. He brought his 4 kids with him, and it was my father, Neville, Lynn, Garth and Auntie Leslie. They all came up. Dad at that stage was probably about 18 or 19, I think. He hadn't finished his apprenticeship, and the rest were all then younger than that again. The boys worked around the different farms around as well, because there was no money in working for Dad here. So they worked around on different farms, Owens's and around the place, digging rabbits and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes they went out shearing out west. And one record in Grandma's diary said Garth and Neville arrived home, they're pretty happy, they had a good trip, they only broke 1 axle. Now that would have been the old whippet truck. Not long after they came here, the Dodge was no good to them, so they sold that and they bought an old head truck which had been on blocks during the war, I think, and it had a very narrow cab because it was out of a steel yard, so they put long lengths of steel straight out past the cabin. And he brought this truck and he extended the cabin at the front, so the driver's position, the steering wheel's about 1/3 the way in. And so quite often we'd sit beside him on the driver's side and put our hand out for him because he couldn't reach that far to get to the edge of the truck, And at one stage we were in there and all stand up and my sister Margaret here, someone said, "Oh, these off a bit, I squashed them grandfather. Just raw squashed in the front of the old chef truck. We kept that till about 1948 when they bought a Bedford, which was the last vehicle they ever owned. But look, this is rather special. They lived here, they developed it, built the two sheds that are up there. The hay shed was fairly new. I remember it being built because the one just before that got burnt down in a lightning strike, and the brand new shaft cutter was burnt, and that really just Cliff and Bunny one, I think it was Cliff and Bunny shaft cutter. Just bought it, just set up and it got burnt down. So they built the new hay shed, they built that, then they built the shed where the tractors are, and that's made out of tomato pulp tins, and grandfather sat on a box and flattened them all out because that's the only money they had was to make it out of that, and over the years they extended this and fixed it up. All were done on their way. Uncle Lynn basically stayed here all his working life and worked with grandfather and grandma, and he ultimately then bought the property which was adjacent to the farm out here. The only way into it was through Garthown. It was called Rocky Hill. It belonged to Harold Todd. He was a one-legged man on a horse, lived on his own up there. He used to come down here a couple of times a week to get his mail, and you'd see Harold and say good day, and he'd go back on his horse, and that's all he'd see of him half the time. Uncle Lynn bought that off Harold, and still lived here. And Colin started his working life out here, I think, didn't you, Colin?
Yeah.
And spent many years here working. So it's become pretty special to, probably more so to Colin than me, because Colin worked here more than I did. I worked like here when needed. For example, when they built the dam down the bottom, the first put the dam in, the telephone line that we had here was a V Lagoon 4U. It was a party line. We were 4U. Across over to McPhillamys, across through back to Guggety's, I think, and Owens', but across through where the dam is, and the wire went underwater. So we had to get some grant from the council, because Bathurst Council owned the dam. They had to give him a grant to relocate the telephone line, so I got the job of digging all those holes with the crowbar. When I was about 16, I'll tell you what, I haven't forgotten that in a hurry either. But just aside of grandfather, when this happened, the line's going under the water, and of course that's dangerous to speedboat, but it was a private line, and grandfather was responsible to maintain it. He used to maintain it off his draft horse, or semi-draft horse, called Bonnie. He went everywhere on Bonnie. He went to the toilet on Bonnie. He pruned the trees off Bonnie. Everywhere. Bonnie was that's how he worked. The toilet, by the way, was down over here somewhere on the edge of the creek, and it had a little, when you went in, you pushed the barrel off, the little arm went up to tell you if someone was in there. And when they moved and built the septic tank, they moved the arm up there too. Anyway, he contacted the council and said, look, you've got to do something for me because the wire is now going through the dam, that's no good. You've got to reroute it. And they said, well, look, we'll put some risers on the post and string the wire out of the water, and we'll buy you a boat. And you can put the boat down there and you can go across in your boat and you can service your line. And grandfather wrote back and said, you can't put your horse in a boat. Well, that's what he said, but the letter didn't quite say it quite like that. But that's what he said. Anyway, so I worked here quite a bit, and I grew very fond of it. I worked in the shearing shed quite a lot, and digging tussocks and all those sort of things. And then, grandfather in his wisdom when he was getting a bit older, decided that the farm should be broken up into a partnership. Partnership with motor. Was it Fragar and Sons or something? And he said, the deal is, you fellas, that your repayments, he loaned them the money to buy it, so it didn't cost them anything to buy it. They had to buy into the partnership, but the deal was that the repayments that everyone made equaled exactly the profit of the farm. So if there's no profit of the farm, no replacements. If there are no repayments, if there's a big profit, big repayments. By the time he died, it was all repaid. You want to?
A couple of little things. One is the orchard. Now, you've all heard of the Fragar peach. Well, originally it was the Fragar special, Uncle Frank called it. And he grew it from a seed. And he went up and he reckoned it was, worked on orchard when he was younger, and he knew a bit about fruit trees, and he reckoned there was nothing quite like it. So he took it into the research station, some wood and some fruit, and took it in and had them look at it, and they ended up getting graft, getting a lot of wood and grafting trees, and that's where the Fragar peach comes from, which you can still get from some nurseries. not as easy as it used to be. It was quite a popular piece there for a while, but it's not as popular now. You can still get it. The original tree was right down the bottom corner of Big Gully, wasn't it?
It was. I'm not sure of the bottom or top.
We have got an
plan
actual
of it is in there.
Yeah, we've got a plan of it. Yeah.
It was a beautiful tasting peach, but it was a clingstone, which was the pain. You had to eat it over the
It was
sink.
a white flesh clingstone peach, but a very beautiful
But
flavour.
on that plan it's called a special, and
Yeah, it's the Fragar special.
I was
That's
told
what
he
we call it.
tried to register it as a special, and they said he can't. It has to be something else. So what about the Fragar special?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. bit, yeah.
When they've changed it, it's just a Fragar. If you go to get it, it's a Fragar. It's not called Fragar special.
Just after he died, Dad got a letter. Dad was the executor in the will, and he got a letter from a laboratory, an agricultural laboratory in France, asking them would they please send over a cutting of the Fragar special to the tree so do some work on
But
it.
it had died in about
Yeah.
not that many years before.
But it's interesting, I'll just throw a side in there. Some of our kids, Rodney particularly, my son decided we'd better have a Fragar special each. So he went into the nursery at Bath, at Orange, and he said, oh, can you get me a Fragar special peach? You got any of them? Oh no, I haven't got any, but I'll get you some. All right, so he ordered 3 or 4 or whatever, and he says, right, now, what name do I put down? He says, oh, Rodney Fragar. It's Fragar. He said, yes, my great-grandfather. Sorry.
And another unique thing is, this is Auntie Hilda's lemon tree. I always call it Auntie Hilda's lemon tree. She grew it from the seed. To my knowledge, it never had fruit. Anyway, a couple of years ago, we were out here and there was one lone little orange. Anyway, we took it home and Kirby and I cut it in half, and yeah, it wasn't the best orange you ever came across, but it was definitely an orange. Yeah, that was not it was about that big round, yeah, and it was a bit tart, very ordinary little orange. Anyway, that's all right. Last year, we picked 2 lemons. So the only thing I can think, Uncle Frank was a great one at grafting, so I assume he grafted an orange onto the lemon stock. So it's got both, but I don't know which it was. And every year it grows up, the frost takes the top off it, then it grows up again. So it's a tough little tree. Nobody ever looks after it. But so far, Auntie Hilda planted it, so goodness knows how many years ago. It's been here as long as I can remember, and we've picked 3 fruit off. When I was a kid, before I worked out here, where you're all standing, there used to be a big high fence across there. And this yard was his veggie garden. There was no flowers or anything like that in it. The only flower was the old rose bush around the side, which is still there. Kirby's been pruning it and got it going again. And he used to have a patch of strawberries and all other veggies.
Rhubarb.
Yeah, rhubarb was always there. And yeah, so there was no grass, it was just all dug up in all veggie garden, backyard. So it was pretty unique in that way. If anyone wants to look at the shed, you're welcome. We did put a bit of stick across it so that everyone didn't traipse in there and fall through the white ant floor. But if you walk around, you can look in it. Out the back is the old horse stalls. The log that the horses ate out of is still there. The feeder in the stalls. If you look in at some stage, you can see the battens in the main pitch. Round wood, and then the battens the tins nail onto is round rails adds flat on both sides to make them into roughly 2v1s. And that was what the tin was nailed onto. Round rails adds flat. They're a bit unique also. Quite a few. When I left school, I finished school one day and I started working in the shearing shed out here the next day. And Auntie Hilda used to feed me, look after me. I got $4 a day in my lunch. Big money. And I learnt to shear in that shed. We couldn't get a shearer one year, and Lynn said, well, we'll shear them ourselves. So I'd shear one, and then he'd shear one, and we'd take turns, and he taught me to shear.